Daily Mail again, who don't know how to format their website. But anyway, Japanese professor who tried to sue liberal SOAS University for racial discrimination after boss spoke to her about sushi is branded hypersensitive and has case thrown out. That is 99.9% of all cancel culture. 99.9% of all cancel culture, all the online crying, all the online screaming, all of that stuff, 99.9% of it is everybody's hypersensitive and everyone is so desperate to be a victim or stand up on behalf of perceived victims. That's all it is. People want attention. People want attention and want to stroke their ego. That's 99.9% of all cancel culture. That's what it is. This judge absolutely hit the nail on the head. But anyway, a hypersensitive Japanese, I love that, it's just getting used to describe her now, Japanese academic who tried to sue a British university for racism after her university boss told her she liked sushi has just had her case thrown out by a tribunal judge. That sounds like a bumbling woman trying to go, like, it's like, what's that bit in Get Out? You know, I would have voted for Obama for like a third term, like, if I could have. I mean, you know, when you try and relate to black people, it's like, I never knew my dad either, like... I steal bikes too. Oh, man, yeah, you know, I'm cool like that. I'm cool and hip. Can I say it? But anyway, Professor Nano Sato Rosberg accused Provost Claire Ozan of being prejudiced, claiming she would not have said to a German, I like sausage. No, I would have said, I hate them as well. I mean, I love beer. I love beer. Do you like beer, Hans? I love beer. Anyway, I mean, I don't even drink. But anyway, but an employment tribunal found that senior academic Professor Ozan was just making small talk and trying to be friendly to find common ground, and no reasonable person would have taken offence to her question. I was actually kind of curious. I was like, the Japanese people, even though they do have a lot of like social order and all that type of stuff, they've got this thing where if they have a problem, even if they've got sort of been offended, they clam up about it because no one over there wants to cause a scene and all that. But then I saw hyphenated name and instead Professor Sato Rosberg was found by a judge to have been predisposed to finding fault with Professor Ozan, which is 99.9% of all cancel culture. People aren't out there going, you said this bad thing. They're out there looking for it. Some of them even want you to say horrible stuff to them just so that they can go, oh, and then be a victim, because once they're a victim, they get attention. And that's what it is. Basically, it's people whose mum and daddies were working a lot when they were younger and didn't give them enough attention. So now they've realised that society now rewards victims and everybody flocks around perceived victims, even if they're totally not victims, and everybody's realised that it gets you social clout. So it's essentially just little sociopaths looking for attention. That's all it is. It meant that the culture and linguistics expert, finding fault with Ozan, who she had previously accused of being unconsciously biased against her. You've got your unconscious bias because you're white and you don't like me. I mean, I don't like you now because I've realised what an insufferable shit you are. But anyway, it meant the culture and linguistics expert claims of racial discrimination and harassment against the School of Oriental and African Studies. So that's where the Assassin's Creed came from. But anyway, well, in London, were thrown out. You can always tell, can't you? The hearing was told Professor Sato Rosberg started teaching at the university in 2014 and 5 years later was appointed as head of department of the school for languages, culture and linguistics. In 2020, Professor Ozan, an insect specialist who has appeared on BBC Radio 4 and calls herself the Muddy Boots biologist, was appointed deputy director and provost and became her manager. Following their first meeting, the hearing was told Professor Sato Rosberg told a colleague that she thought Professor Ozan would be biased because she was not British and was a woman and BAME. So in other words, like the Jap was the one being racist by making predispositions about someone based on their race and gender. So she was the racist the entire time. The call is coming from inside the house. Following their first meeting, the hearing was told Professor Sato Rosberg told a colleague she thought, oh fuck, I've just read that part. People like me, a non-white female, victim, must constantly consider the possibility that they are treated unfairly because of gender or ethnicity, she said later. What a miserable way to live. What an utterly miserable way to live, just constantly all day seeking out reasons to be a victim. That's miserable. I like to touch grass and I like to play with my children and do fun things, not walk around going, I'm sure That man said good morning to me. I'm sure he was victimising me somehow. Like that, man. God, what a miserable way to live. No wonder they all look like that. Like, they look like they're in their 60s with a, like, sad, jaded, just dead look in their eyes. But that little demented, demonic smile, there's a reason they... Because that's them faking it. It looks like that because they're faking happiness. I'm just going to call Professor Rosberg took exception. Hold on, Jesus Christ. There we are. The Central London Tribunal heard that in September 2021, Professor Roseanne told her about a Japanese sushi restaurant near her home, which her family enjoyed. That's idle chit chat. That's bus stop chat. You're just making conversation. Professor Sato Rosberg took exception to this, the hearing was told. She told the tribunal she would not have said that to a German person. I like sausage. No, I would have turned around and said to a German guy, oh, I went to a German restaurant and I tried like this shit and I actually thought it was really good. And then I would start a conversation if they were like, oh, yeah, no, that stuff's actually amazing or something like, you know. You're just trying to start a conversation with a fucking person. If Professor Claire Roseanne wished to make conversation, we had many commonalities through our work and professional academic endeavour, she added. But she chose to speak only about topics directly relevant to my race, the liking of Japanese food, and that her family like it and eat sushi. Over the next 6 months, Professor Sato Rosberg continued to complain about Professor Roseanne, and in January 2022, she emailed a senior member of the university's administration accusing her of bullying and harassment. Asking for her to be replaced as her manager, the tribunal heard she said, she tries to suppress my voice, the voice of a woman of colour. They're so fucking entitled, aren't they? Before later claiming she had exhibited racist microaggressions towards her. I'm so happy that I only hire white men. I would never hire a woman. Uh, I mean, I would if I had any positions available, but I don't. The hearing was told that later that year, the university launched an investigation into her claims, during which time Professor Sato Rosberg was promoted to Professor in Translation Studies. After the you got a nice little promotion out to get you to move apartment while the investigation was ongoing. Very well done, clever. You're really using the system of privilege manipulation very, very well. After the investigation completed in February 2023 rejected her claims, she took SOAS to the Employment Tribunal, claiming race discrimination, race harassment, victimisation, and unfair treatment for whistleblowing. Rejecting her case, employment judge Gillian Brown said, another woman as well, ooh, that must sting, said Professor Sato Rosberg had concluded Professor Roseanne was prejudiced against her without evidence from the start. The tribunal concluded that Professor Sato Rosberg had decided from the outset that Professor Roseanne would be biased because she was not British and was a woman and BAME. Right, so there it is. That's all of cancel culture summed up immediately. That's all of it summed up. Everyone just wants to be a victim because it gets them attention. It also allows them to do horrible things to a perceived oppressor because they're just a nasty person that wants to do awful shit, but they want their ego and public image to be intact at the end of it. But I did that to a Nazi. I'm a good guy. Everyone clap. Yeah, I stabbed their baby in front of them. But it was a Nazi, so it's fine. And they got to do their awful little horrible thing. I mean, it's like a picture of Patrick Bateman saying, oh no, it was right for me to do all that to those women because they were all pedos. And everyone's like, oh yeah, okay. But he doesn't give a shit really. He's just using it as an outlet for his awful orgies. That's what all this is. That's what the majority of modern leftist activism is. The tribunal considered that as a result of this preconception, she was predisposed to find fault with Professor Roseanne and to see race discrimination in her interactions with her when there was none. Of the sushi remark, the judge added, on one occasion in 18 months, Professor Roseanne spoke to Professor Sato Rosberg warmly about her local Japanese restaurant and her family's love of sushi. So it was only once, it got brought up once, and that was it. She did so knowing that Professor Sato Rosberg was Japanese and believing that she would receive this positively. She was making small talk and trying to establish a point of shared interest. Miss Ozan said nothing detrimental about Japan. This was one conversation of many about many different subjects which Professor Roseanne had with her over the course of 18 months. The tribunal concluded that if Professor Roseanne's comments in this regard were partly because of Professor Sato Rosberg's face, they were not a detriment nor harassment. The tribunal decided that Professor Roseanne mentioning a sushi restaurant and her family's love of sushi was not a detriment because a reasonable person would not consider themselves at a disadvantage when a manager trying to be friendly and find common ground was enthusiastic about food from the person's country of origin. Like, see, this thing is, if I ever meet an Italian guy and all that, I'll be like, mate, I've been to Sorrento, your country's food's fucking, because it is Italian. Like, there's a reason all old Italian men are fat, man. Like, seriously, I went over there and I went to like the equivalent of like a pizza kebab shop. It was one of those late night ones that people go to when they're on their way back from the pub, and it was the best pizza I ever had until I went to an actual proper like Italian restaurant. Italian food's fucking excellent, man. I'm desperate to go back to Sorrento. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say that. I'm being racist to all of my Italian subscribers. But I mean, if I wanted to be racist, I would say, hey, babidi boobidi spaghetti Ferrari. Wahoo! But, you know, a reasonable person would not take offence to such complimentary and friendly words. In this case, Professor Roseanne's words were not even unfortunate, they were not reasonably seen as hurtful or misjudged. On the contrary, Professor Sato Rosberg's objection reflected her own hypersensitivity and predisposition to find fault with Miss Roseanne. I wish, where are all the speech judges like this? Where are all the speech judges who, at the end of the case, at the end of the trial, turn around and go, "You're just being a little bit of a pussy, man. You're just being a little sensitive little soft boy. That's what you're being. Why can't all the other judges do that?" See, whenever these people start bringing court cases because this man made a tweet that said I'm a man, why don't all judges just start going, "Shut up, just shut up and stop being a little bitch. Shut up and stop being a little loser. Why are you wasting taxpayer money on this garbage? Because you're a little gimp that never got shown enough attention from mummy and daddy, so you seek it by permanently trying to be a victim. Or you're a little bit of a sociopath and you want to inflict your horrendous wrath upon other people because you just have this demon in you that you're trying to get out. So you fucking waste everybody's time with this garbage because you want to keep your ego intact. But that person's a bad racist. They spoke about sushi. Fucking blow it up your arse. Do you want us to make it 3 times? We'll fucking make it 3 times.